In the heart of a dense forest, a wild Mustang lay trapped in the unlikeliest of places, entangled in the gnarled branches of a tree. Once untamed and free, his chestnut coat was now matted with dirt and streaked with blood. His sides heaved with each labored breath, every inhale bringing sharp pain. He was stranded helpless, while a pack of wolves circled closer, their growls reverberating through the trees. The scent of blood had drawn them in, and they were biding their time, waiting for the moment to strike. The forest, usually alive with sound, was eerily silent, as though holding its breath. The Mustang's wide, terrified eyes darted between the wolves and the forest beyond. But there was no escape. His legs were tangled, his strength fading. No one had seen him fall. No one had heard his frantic struggle, except for two hunters. Jason and Matt had been tracking game through the dense underbrush when Jason caught a flash of chestnut in the shadows ahead. "Hey, look at that," Jason whispered, motioning toward a clearing. Matt squinted. "What is that?" "A horse. How the hell did it end up like that?" Jason shook his head, unease washing over him. The Mustang's desperate struggles and the predatory glint in the wolves' eyes told a grim story. Time was running out. "We have to help him," Jason said, urgency in his voice. Matt hesitated. "Are you sure? It's a wild Mustang. Not our problem. He's out here for a reason." Jason's heart ached at the thought of leaving the animal to its fate. He looked again at the Mustang, whose eyes pleaded for help, and something shifted within him. He couldn't abandon this creature, not like this. Without waiting for Matt's response, Jason slung his rifle off his shoulder and began moving toward the clearing. As he approached, the enormity of the risk weighed on him. The Mustang, though injured, could lash out in panic. The wolves, emboldened by hunger, could turn on him at any moment. But Jason pressed on, whispering softly to the horse, his voice low and soothing. "It's okay," he murmured. "I'm not here to hurt you. We'll get you out of this." The wolves hesitated, their growls faltering as they sensed a shift in the air. Jason's calm resolve unnerved them, but their presence remained a chilling reminder of the stakes. The Mustang's trembling body stilled slightly, his wide eyes locking onto Jason's. For a fleeting moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. The man wasn't a threat. He was a chance, a hope. Jason moved cautiously, his every step measured, his gaze flickering between the wolves and the horse. The air was thick with tension, every second feeling like an eternity. Finally, Jason reached the Mustang's side. The animal flinched at first, but Jason kept his movements slow and deliberate. Gently, he began to untangle the Mustang's legs from the cruel branches that had ensnared him. "Easy now," Jason whispered. "We've got this." The Mustang's breath slowed, his body sagging with relief as Jason worked. The wolves watched, their growls muted, uncertainty creeping into their predatory stance. Jason's hands remained steady as he freed the horse, his voice a quiet reassurance. This wasn't just about survival. It was a moment of connection, of resilience, and perhaps an unexpected miracle. Jason could feel the warmth of the Mustang's body, the pulse of life faint but still present beneath his skin. The horse was barely holding on. As Jason cleared the final branch from the Mustang's tangled legs, he gently urged the animal to rise. "Come on, you can do it," Jason whispered, his voice steady yet filled with quiet urgency. He placed a reassuring hand on the Mustang's neck, guiding him to his feet. The horse, weak and trembling, wavered for a moment before finally standing. His legs were unsteady, but he was alive. Jason turned to see Matt standing behind him, his face pale with concern. The wolves had retreated, their opportunity lost, but their presence lingered like a shadow over the forest. "We did it," Jason said, his voice thick with emotion. But their relief was fleeting. The Mustang's journey was far from over. He was still weak, still injured, and the woods were no place for an animal in his condition to recover. Jason scanned the forest, his gaze locking onto a memory of a place not far from here, a hunter's cabin that could provide shelter. "We need to get him to safety," Jason said firmly. Matt nodded, and with that, the first steps of an extraordinary journey began. A journey of healing, trust, and survival. Jason had seen many things in his life, moments that had shaken him to the core and made him question humanity's place in the world. But this was different. The wild Mustang standing by his side was more than just a creature of the wild. He was a symbol of resilience, of survival against impossible odds. Jason didn't know why, but he felt an unshakable need to protect the horse, to guide him through whatever lay ahead. The Mustang trembled as they moved slowly through the forest, each step heavy with exhaustion. His ribs were painfully visible, his chestnut coat streaked with blood. Jason kept a steady hand on the horse's shoulder, whispering soft reassurances, even though he wasn't sure the animal could understand him. Yet, something had shifted in the Mustang's demeanor. He was still skittish, his ears flicking nervously at every sound, but he leaned into Jason's touch with a tentative trust. It was as if the horse understood that Jason was his lifeline. The forest around them felt oppressive, the shadows deepening as the sun sank lower in the sky. Jason remained alert, knowing the wolves hadn't gone far. The pack had retreated, but they would be back. Out here, danger was never far away. They moved cautiously, the weight of the journey pressing down on Jason's shoulders. The Mustang's steps grew slower, his exhaustion more apparent with each passing moment. Jason could see how much the horse had endured, how long he must have fought to survive in the wild. Finally, Jason caught a glimpse of movement through the trees, the faint outline of a cabin. Relief surged through him, but it was short-lived. The cabin had been abandoned for years, a refuge for hunters and travelers seeking shelter. He didn't know what state it would be in, but right now, it was their only hope. "We're almost there, buddy," Jason murmured, urging the Mustang forward. The horse stumbled, his legs buckling under his weight. Jason's heart clenched as he steadied the animal, wrapping an arm around his neck for support. "Just a little further," Jason said softly, his resolve hardening. Every step brought them closer to safety, and the beginning of a bond that would change both their lives forever. Jason paused, watching as the Mustang struggled to stay on his feet. Without hesitation, he rushed forward, steadying the horse by grasping his neck and guiding him upright. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met. The Mustang's gaze, though filled with exhaustion, held something deeper, a connection. Jason thought he caught a flicker of gratitude in those wild, pain-filled eyes. It was a brief but profound moment, enough to fill Jason with renewed purpose. This wasn't just about saving a wild animal anymore. It was about something greater, a bond between two beings who had become unlikely allies, relying on one another to survive. With steady steps, Jason led the Mustang forward, the cabin now only a few hundred yards away. As they neared the clearing, a low, guttural growl shattered the silence. Jason froze, his hand instinctively moving to his rifle. He scanned the forest, searching for the source of the sound. There, just beyond the tree line, the wolves emerged. Their eyes gleamed with hunger, and their bodies were low to the ground, muscles taut as they stalked closer. Jason's pulse quickened as he glanced at the Mustang, who now trembled visibly. The horse was weakening rapidly, his legs shaking under his weight. Jason faced a choice: stand and fight or push forward. But with the wolves closing in, there was no time to hesitate. "Come on, buddy." "Just a little further," Jason urged, his voice calm but resolute. The Mustang hesitated, fear rippling through his body. Jason could feel the animal's exhaustion, but they had come too far to give up now. The wolves' growls grew louder, their confidence growing as they encircled the pair. Jason tightened his grip on the reins and continued urging the Mustang forward. Every step felt agonizingly slow as they moved toward the cabin. The tension in the air was suffocating, the clearing ahead so close, yet feeling impossibly far. The Mustang stumbled again, his legs buckling under the strain. Blood dripped steadily from his wounds, leaving a dark trail on the forest floor. Jason's heart ached at the sight of the horse's pain, but there was no time to stop, no time to second-guess their chances. "Stay with me, buddy," Jason muttered, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. The wolves had paused, their growling momentarily silenced, as if they sensed the critical moment. Jason's hand hovered over his rifle, his body tense, ready to act. He knew he couldn't outrun the wolves. They were faster, stronger, and outnumbered him. Their only chance lay in reaching the cabin. As the pack advanced, Jason noticed something shift in the Mustang's demeanor. Despite his fear and exhaustion, the horse lifted his head, his ears swiveling alertly. The wild spirit that had kept him alive through countless hardships seemed to spark again. The Mustang wasn't just following Jason anymore. He was standing with him. The lead wolf, a large gray beast, moved closer, its eyes locked on Jason. The rest of the pack followed, their movements coordinated, their intent unmistakable. Jason's mind raced as he weighed his options. His rifle was loaded, but he only had so many shots. The Mustang was too weak to run, and the cabin was their only refuge. "Just a little further," Jason urged, his voice unwavering. The wolves were mere feet away now, their growls reverberating in the cold air. Jason raised his rifle, taking aim at the lead wolf. The sharp crack of the gunshot echoed through the forest, and the wolf yelped, stumbling back in pain. The rest of the pack faltered, their confidence shaken. Jason seized the moment. "Go!" he shouted, his voice urgent. The Mustang, as if understanding the command, surged forward with surprising strength. Jason ran alongside him, his eyes never leaving the wolves. The horse's hooves struck the ground with renewed determination, carrying them both closer to safety. The cabin loomed ahead, a silhouette against the darkening sky. They were almost there, but Jason knew the fight wasn't over yet. The wolves regrouped, but they were a few steps too late. The Mustang had found a burst of courage, and with Jason guiding him, they sprinted toward the shelter. As they reached the cabin, Jason slammed open the door and pulled the Mustang inside just as the wolves circled back. He quickly bolted the door behind them, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. The Mustang stumbled into the corner and collapsed on the floor, exhausted but alive. Outside, the growls of the wolves could still be heard, but they would have to wait. Jason had won this battle. The air inside the cabin was thick with tension as Jason leaned against the wooden door, listening for any sign of the wolves. Their growls had subsided for now, but the fear still lingered, hanging in the air like a dark cloud. Jason's heart raced, his breath coming in short, quick bursts as he glanced over at the Mustang. The horse was lying in the corner, his body heaving with each labored breath. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Jason's mind spun, torn between relief and the harsh reality of the situation. They were safe for now, but the danger was far from over. The wolves weren't gone. They were only waiting for their next chance. Outside these walls, the world was unforgiving. The Mustang let out a soft whinny, snapping Jason's attention back to him. The animal's eyes were wide and his body trembled, not just from physical exhaustion, but from the mental toll of the night's events. Jason could see the fear in the horse's eyes. The Mustang had already survived so much, but Jason knew the hardest part wasn't over. He had to help the horse heal, but the cabin was small and cramped, nowhere near equipped for proper medical care. Jason knew what he had to do, but the reality of their limited supplies weighed heavily on him. Without the right equipment, all he could do was offer temporary relief. "Hang in there, buddy," Jason whispered, kneeling beside the Mustang. His hand gently brushed the horse's coat, and he could feel the animal's body twitch beneath his touch. The horse was scared, but Jason also sensed a spark of determination, a will to live that had kept him going despite everything. Suddenly, a scratching sound at the door broke the silence, sending a chill through Jason's spine. The wolves were back. Their persistence was maddening, a constant reminder that they were just outside, waiting for the next opportunity. Jason stood up slowly, his eyes flicking to the rifle leaning against the wall. There was no point in fighting them off with just one weapon and a tired body. His only hope was to wait them out, but how long could they stay hidden here? The growls outside grew louder, their frustration clear as they circled the cabin. Jason moved toward the window, peering through the cracks between the wooden boards. Moonlight cast eerie shadows across the clearing, and his heart raced as he scanned the area. He could see the wolves moving in the dark, their eyes glowing with an unnatural hunger. But there was something else. A figure moved among the trees. Jason's eyes narrowed, unsure whether it was friend or foe, but in this world, it didn't matter. Either they were here to help, or they were here to make things worse. Without thinking, Jason grabbed his rifle and moved toward the door. His heart pounded in his chest, but there was no turning back. The wolves were closing in, and if someone else was out there who could help, it could make all the difference. Jason cracked the door open just enough to peek outside. The night air was cold, and the weight of the world seemed to bear down on him. Behind him, the Mustang whinnied softly, and Jason swallowed hard, focusing on the figure moving closer. The shadows seemed to swallow the person whole as they approached, and Jason's fingers tightened around the rifle, ready for whatever might come next. As the figure stepped into the moonlight, Jason's eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't a person at all. It was a horse, a wild stallion, a massive black figure that radiated power. The Mustang inside the cabin stirred at the sight, lifting his head weakly as though recognizing the presence of his kind. Jason could hardly believe his eyes. The stallion was beautiful, untamed, and strong. In that moment, Jason understood. The Mustang wasn't alone. There was more to this world than he had realized. The wild stallion was a symbol of hope, a reminder of the freedom and wildness that still thrived out here, untouched by fear and desperation. The stallion's hooves struck the ground, and the sound seemed to break the tension in the air. The wolves, sensing a change, hesitated for a moment. Jason couldn't explain it, but something about the stallion made the pack pull back. They were no longer as eager to approach. The stallion pulsed with an energy that Jason couldn't quite define, but it was enough to fill him with strength. The Mustang wasn't alone. He had a partner in the wild. With a final glance at the Mustang lying in the cabin, Jason stepped outside, determination filling his chest. The battle wasn't over yet. The stallion stood at the edge of the clearing, his dark coat gleaming under the moonlight like a shadow in the night. His powerful frame exuded confidence, and the sheer force of his presence seemed to challenge the wolves circling just beyond the tree-line. Jason could feel the tension rising, a silent agreement between him and the stallion that neither of them would back down. For a moment, everything was still. The wind held its breath, and the wolves' growls were barely audible in the distance. Jason sensed the stallion's intelligence in the way he held himself, every muscle taut, ready for whatever came next. This was no ordinary horse. This was a creature forged by the wild, a symbol of survival against all odds. Jason tightened his grip around his rifle as he scanned the surrounding woods. The stallion had done something extraordinary, but it wasn't enough to guarantee their safety. The wolves would circle back, as they always did. In that brief moment of silence, Jason realized something. The stallion wasn't just offering protection. He was offering an alliance. He had come to show Jason that he wasn't alone, that nature had a way of bringing the unexpected into a fight. Jason had once thought the Mustang would need to be the one to fight to survive, but now it was clear. The stallion was here to prove that even the wildest of creatures needed help. A soft whinny from inside the cabin broke Jason's thoughts. The Mustang had risen to his feet, his injuries still visible, but his spirit clearly lifted by the arrival of the wild stallion. Jason turned back toward the clearing and saw the stallion moving closer, stepping with an elegance that belied his size. It was as though the horse knew the outcome of the fight before it even began. Jason couldn't help but admire the stallion's strength. Despite being so different, one wild, the other tamed, the two horses shared an understanding. It was as if the stallion's presence had unlocked a spark of resilience in the Mustang, reminding him that he too could overcome his wounds. But Jason couldn't afford to wait and watch. The wolves weren't the only threat. The stallion might be a force of nature, but he couldn't fight a pack of wolves alone. Jason's mind raced as he formulated a plan. If the stallion could keep the wolves at bay long enough, he might have time to gather the Mustang and find a better position. The wolves were growing bolder now, their growls escalating as they pushed forward, their yellow eyes gleaming in the shadows. This was their moment. They had to strike fast. Turning back toward the cabin, urgency filled every step Jason took. The Mustang was moving again, though with hesitation, as if sensing the danger ahead. Jason needed to act quickly. He grabbed the rope he had set aside earlier, tying it securely to the Mustang's halter before turning toward the stallion. "Stay close," Jason muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible. The stallion snorted in response, his eyes focused and unwavering. Jason knew this wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a test of trust, courage, and perseverance. The wild stallion had shown up out of nowhere, but now it was Jason's turn to show the horse that the bond they shared could lead them through anything. It was more than just a fight. It was a partnership. With the Mustang tethered, Jason moved toward the wild stallion, rifle ready in hand. He had one shot at this. The pack of wolves was closing in fast, and he needed to get both horses to safety before the situation turned deadly. The stallion moved alongside him, his dark figure like a shadow in the night. Jason could feel the animal's strength next to him, the air thick with the sense of an unspoken agreement. Together, they would face this challenge. The wolves, sensing the challenge, stepped forward, their growls escalating into vicious snarls. But Jason wasn't afraid. He was prepared. The final test had begun. The forest felt suffocating now, the air thick with the scent of pine and impending danger. Jason's heart raced as he watched the wild stallion and the wolves prepare to clash. The wounded Mustang and the wild stallion stood side by side, their eyes fixed on the encroaching pack of wolves. The creatures circled closer, their growls echoing through the trees, the sound of their hunger sending a chill down Jason's spine. His breath caught in his chest. This was it. There was no turning back now. The stakes had never been higher. He had to protect both horses, especially the Mustang, whose injuries made him vulnerable. Undeterred by the looming threat, the stallion stepped forward, his muscles rippling beneath his coat as he moved. His dark eyes locked onto Jason's for a moment, and Jason could feel the silent understanding between them. The wild horse wasn't just protecting himself. He was protecting them all. The bond between them had grown stronger over the course of the night, and Jason couldn't help but wonder if the stallion had always known what would happen. Jason raised his rifle, the heavy weight of it grounding him in the moment. He wasn't just holding a weapon. He was holding a lifeline, a chance for survival. His fingers tightened around the trigger, but he knew better than to act impulsively. Patience was key. The wolves had to make their move first. The wind rustled the leaves above, sending a sudden chill through the clearing. Jason's eyes darted back and forth, every nerve on edge as he surveyed the scene. The wolves were closing in, their eyes gleaming with hunger, but they hesitated. Jason knew they could smell the fear, but they could also sense the power of the wild stallion, an animal who would fight to the death if necessary. The stallion let out a low, guttural whinny, a challenge to the pack. It echoed through the trees, a reminder that not all prey was easily taken. The wolves, their instincts sharp as ever, paused, considering the risk. They had to be sure. Jason held his breath, waiting. The stallion had given the wolves a warning, but would it be enough? In the silence, the Mustang shifted, his legs trembling with effort as he tried to stand taller. Jason turned his attention to him, watching closely for any sign of weakness. The Mustang was still injured, his side slick with blood and his breathing shallow, but he was standing. He wasn't giving up. Jason's heart swelled with pride for the Mustang. He had come so far, pushed beyond his limits, and now, with the wild stallion by his side, he had a chance, a real chance. The wolves, however, weren't about to be outdone. They closed in again, their low growls reverberating in the air, ready to pounce. But Jason had one more trick up his sleeve. He took a deep breath and raised his rifle, aiming it skyward. The blast echoed through the forest, a deafening sound that shattered the tense quiet. The wolves jumped back, momentarily startled by the sudden noise. But it was enough. The stallion seized a moment of confusion to lunge forward. His powerful hooves struck the earth with a force that sent the wolves scattering in all directions. The pack hesitated, their instincts telling them that the fight would not be worth it. Jason didn't waste any time. He grabbed the Mustang's halter, pulling him close as the wild stallion created a barrier between them and the wolves. The wolves, realizing they had been outmatched, turned tail and fled into the shadows, their howls slowly fading into the distance. The clearing fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of the two horses and Jason's pounding heart. The danger had passed, at least for now, but Jason knew this wouldn't be the last time the wolves came. He had bought them time, but time was all he had. For a moment, everything seemed still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The stallion, his head held high, stood at the edge of the clearing, watching. The Mustang, still shaken, took a hesitant step forward, his cautious eyes scanning the surroundings. Jason exhaled slowly, wiping his brow. They had made it. They had survived the night, but the night wasn't over yet. The first light of dawn began to break through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The stillness of the night was replaced by the soft chirping of birds and the distant rustling of leaves. The Mustang, Jason, and the wild stallion had made it through the night, but the real test was just beginning. The Mustang's injuries were severe, and though he had survived the wolf attack, Jason knew he couldn't keep him out here much longer. His breaths were labored, his body weak. He was fighting, but Jason could see the strain in every movement. The stallion, however, appeared strong, as though he had been born for this kind of life. His wild eyes reflected determination and a primal understanding of how to survive in the forest. He was a creature of the wild, untamed, unbroken, and powerful. Jason looked up at the small cabin in the distance. It wasn't much, but it was a refuge, a place of safety where he could tend to the Mustang's wounds and give him a fighting chance at survival. The stallion, however, had made it clear he wasn't going to be tied down. He was a symbol of freedom, a creature who would never be controlled, not even by the man who had fought by his side. Jason walked over to the Mustang, gently resting his hand on the horse's trembling neck. "We're almost there," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You just have to hold on a little longer." The Mustang nickered softly, as if understanding his words. His eyes met Jason's, filled with trust and quiet gratitude. Jason's heart swelled in his chest. He had come to realize something over the course of their journey. It wasn't just about survival. It was about connection. The bond they had formed was something beyond words, beyond any human understanding. It was a bond forged in the heat of battle, in the face of danger, and in the quiet moments where they relied on each other. As they slowly made their way toward the cabin, the wild stallion followed them, keeping a watchful eye on the perimeter. Jason knew he couldn't keep the stallion here forever. He was a free spirit, and no matter how much Jason wanted to, he couldn't cage him. The wildness in his soul couldn't be tamed. But for now, they were together. For now, they had made it through the night, and the Mustang had a fighting chance at survival. That was all Jason could ask for. When they reached the cabin, Jason led the Mustang inside. The warmth of the small structure was a stark contrast to the cold, harsh world outside. He carefully set the horse down, his hands trembling as he began to tend to the Mustang's wounds. The stallion, watching from the doorway, seemed content for now, his presence a silent reminder of the bond they had shared. Jason looked out the window, his eyes meeting the horizon. The wild stallion had made it clear that he wasn't meant for this life. He was meant for the open plains, for the freedom of the wild. And Jason had to let him go. He turned back to the Mustang, who had already begun to rest. The tension in his body was slowly easing. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, Jason felt a sense of peace settle in his heart. The Mustang had survived, and so had he. Blaze's journey from fear to freedom was a testament to the power of resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a horse and its protector. With each step forward, they both learned that hope can flourish even in the darkest of times. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that courage can change everything. Stay tuned for more inspiring tales.